Oh, hello. In today's video, I'm going to give you my version of a Shatterpoint primary tier list. Okay, so let's get into it. I want to give you a little bit of a preamble first before I whack the tier list on the screen and talk about my choices. This is not just the Longshanks data distilled into a tier list format. Okay, you can do it that way, and I know people. I used to be a big kill team player. I know people in the kill team community that would essentially take the tournament data and extrapolate from that the tier list. I don't think that's helpful or good content, right? This is my take on the state of the meta, and I do think there is some nuance. But if you want to look at the win rate data on Longshanks, like that's there for you. Tune into Shatterpoint Steve, and you'll get a state of the meta update every single month, right? So my interpretation of the tier list format, if I've put something in S tier, that means it's a very dominant unit that needs to be nerfed for the health of the game, right? So an example would be Cassian and Boss. Prior to the balance update, they were definitely S tier units. A tier is my kind of go-to. These are the units that you would expect to see in lists that do well, that you would grab first if you weren't trying to be particularly clever or interesting and you're trying to build a list. Okay, B tier are the units that definitely work, but maybe they are the people who have kind of put the reps into making that particular character work, or there's a character in B tier who might be in a meta defining list, but they like only work in one particular list with loads of particular other things around them, but in that list they are very competitive. C tier units are units that are less competitive, but they are sort of playable, and for various reasons I think it could be problematic to buff them directly. You know, things where actually they're pretty good, but then the things around them aren't that good, or they've just fallen behind a little bit, and maybe you could gently try and buff them, or if you just buffed other things around the tag, they could get there, or somebody could find a list that unlocked them. Those are the C tier units, okay? And then D tier is unplayable trash that needs a buff for the health of the game that you'll almost never see, okay? So this is my tier list, and I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through each of the tiers, each of the characters, and I'm going to try and explain why I've placed that character there. You know, and you can make notes in the comments as we go along and let me know if you think any of my choices are absolutely incorrect and that I'm on kind of crack. There's a little bit of like best to worst within the tiers, but not always, okay? Some of them are grouped just by characters that I wanted to talk about kind of together. So I have no one in S tier. I do not think that the game currently has a kind of dominant character that needs to be nerfed ASAP for the health of the game. I don't think we're there. I don't think we have anybody in that situation. I think that the game is pretty balanced. I think that most, you know, I've got most characters are in A and B, right, which is where you want them to be in something like this. So we're going to start with Morgan Elsbeth. Morgan Elsbeth, I think, is very, very strong. She is contained a little bit by her own era, so you're limited to kind of one or two squads. You're either running her essentially with her own box, which is a very specialist kit that only works in certain lists, or more generally you're running her with Moff Gideon's box, right, with Death Trooper Escort and the Dark Troopers. So you could try something with Mandos, with Bo-Katan. I've even seen people maybe looking at Shin Hati there, but generally speaking, she is being held back a little bit from being S tier with her eras. What makes her so good? She's Darth Maul, but with it's an aura, so she can you know, spend her life for Force. She's really very good at murdering people or disrupting people, and she brings a good bit of kit. She works reasonably well within her tag, and equally she doesn't need to be with other Dathomirians or other Night Sisters or even the Night Troopers to do really good work for lists that are typically going to be Empire lists, just because of the things that she has easier access to bring. But I think Morgan is really viable. The only real problem with Morgan is if you You know, obviously, if you're running her with Night Troopers, then that's a very specific list. You're probably running Morgan Via's, you know, Night Troopers, Death Trooper Escort, Death Troopers. Otherwise, you're running Morgan with Death Trooper Escort. It does just mean that she sucks all of the really good stuff. Like, to make her viable, you're taking all the kind of A-tier secondaries and supports from Empire, and you're piling it into that list. So she, I think, makes it a bit tricky to consider playing like an all-Empire primary if that's something you care about. Apart from that, I think she's a really good character. Padme. Padme is a really technical piece, and I wasn't sure. And for all I've said, it's going to be not going to be driven totally by Longshank's data. The fact that Padme seems to be doing well on Longshanks definitely has nudged me over into my way of thinking that she's A tier. Padme has a really interesting suite of abilities. She, she has to pay Force to do her revenge, which is a limitation and does kind of suggest who you're going to pair her with. Spoilers, it's likely to be Mace Windu. But Padme, with her ability to reposition onto a point and be a tiebreaker as a revenge attack, or if you haven't turned that on yet, she can make your supports hit harder. Both of those are really great abilities. Not saying that Padme is overpowered. Obviously, she can die, right? That's her biggest weakness, is that she's sort of reasonably of glass. But I think Padme is definitely one to watch, and especially if you've not had reps into Padme and you're going to a GT, she is probably one of the more technical pieces on this list. Definitely worth having some practice into Padme. Mace, I think Mace has really hit his stride. Mace is a really interesting character because he can kind of do two things at once. He can be a beater, and he can spend all your force and leverage that into extra attack dice. Or he can be a battery, and he can give you loads of extra force and make the rest of your list kind of work, and he can flex between those two roles as he needs to. He's really loving strategic positions, which in the UK is one of the more popular map types at the moment, right? I should say this is a slight slant towards the UK meta, where we have a real bias seemingly towards strategic positions. I know I love strategic positions, and still Sabotage going strong as well, and the wide maps quite a lot less popular. And so Mace's bubble really loves those maps as well. I think Mace is obviously the Mace Padme is working really well. I don't necessarily think that's Mace's only pairing either. I think Mace can work quite well with in a number of places, and he's very, very flexible as to how the tempo of your game is going. Kiadi, a lot of people been sort of naysaying Kiadi and saying, Kiadi's not all he's cracked up to be. I still think Kiadi is very good. He gives you that ability to kind of save on your force, which is great. He sort of has a force push. I mean, I know a lot of characters have a force push, but Kiadi has a force push, and he also helps with your force because people get cheaper force abilities when they're near wounded characters. Kiadi is doing a lot for you, and he is a support primary, and sometimes it can be hard to play a primary who doesn't have really stunning activations. But actually, I find Kiadi's activations, people say, he doesn't really kill stuff. He can, right? He's not the same level of killing power as someone like Mace can be, for sure, or Morgan Elsbeth, right? But Kiadi, can definitely, with that force push, and he often can get far enough down to get it for free on his combat tree, and he's got a lot of shoves. He can have really impactful activations as well. So big believer in Kiadi. Definitely expect to see him on top tables and in top lists. We'll speak about Luminara. Luminara is really good, but you don't really see her in the Republic. You're going to see her quite often in Separatists, where she really enables that droid sort of shell. Now, a lot of people don't really get why she's so good with droids because they haven't tried it. Essentially, a droid list, it does two things. First of all, you've got the B1s that can be brought back to life, and so they really dislike being condition stacked. So they would like, if they have 2 conditions on them, when they're brought back to life, they'll still have 1 condition on them. They hate that. And likewise, the B2s hate having a disarm or a pin on them. Why? Even when the B2s are dead, you're using them a lot. You're getting a lot of extra dashes and 5 dices out of them from characters like Kraken and Kalani and General Grievous. And so Lumi just stops your dead supports from having conditions on them, which means that you being able to use them more readily for those out of activation moves and shoots that you can get from the rest of your list. That's really important. And then when you do manage to kill something, getting a cheeky dash is always going to be really very good. Now, in terms of Lumi's own turn, yes, she's not staggeringly amazing, but what she can be is very, very hard to shift off a point. One of the hardest primaries in the game to shift off a point. I also don't think that the Separatist pairing is the only pairing that you could try with Lumi. You could do a Lumi Balin list. I think that would work quite well. Lumi's quite tag agnostic. You can put her into places and see what she can do. Princess Leia Charming to the last, I think, is still... Like, she didn't get any nerfs from the balance update. She did get, like, kind of a... Obviously, with Baze and Turret being nerfed in the way they were, the Cassian PLC list is a bit less good because it has a little bit less force to play with. But PLC is still a character who can move a staggering amount of pieces on the board. Like, she can have activation where she can reach out and affect 3 points, 4 points. She can move herself a staggering amount as well when you factor in how many pushes she has ready access to. And her revenge trigger, like, I don't even see her revenge trigger as her main selling point these days. But her revenge trigger, you know, she's still going to have 5 dice attack with those really easy access to pushes on 1 and 2, which can be decisive. And I think you can play PLC Cassian. Wouldn't be surprised if PLC Cassian did very well in a GT. I know I've stopped playing it, but I did always say, I think it's going to come back. One of my biggest problems with Cassian, straight after the nerf, was it's like, well, you're playing with a version of a character that is weaker, that everybody has loads and loads of reps into and loads of practice in how to defeat, right? And now you're playing it and it's worse and people are going to walk all over you. But as we get towards, you know, the GTs towards the end of the season here, people's kind of knowledge of how to defeat Cassian, that's maybe not what they've been grinding reps into. And I think the Cassian PLC list can make a real comeback. It really wouldn't surprise me. So you're looking at Cassian, PLC, K2SO, right, Rebel Commandos. Could take Pathfinders. Pathfinders are insane with Princess Leia as well because of all the dashes she hands out, right? Really, really important piece, really, really mobile piece. And that spy tag makes her invaluable now in the Cassian pairing. We'll talk more about Cassian later on. Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter. Again, a really underrated piece, in my opinion. A lot of people have sort of saying, oh, I think he's underrated, I think he's this, I think he's that. I think Jedi Hunter is still really, really powerful. He is weirdly doing a lot better in Gar, as has been the case for a long time, than he is with Empire. And the reason for that is quite simple. Like, he gives a bonus when you're meleeing, and it's a lot easier to build a Gar list that wants to be meleeing most of the time, right? There's a lot more lightsabers for one thing in Gar, right? And then you've got characters like really rate the Vader boss list. You know, Boss had his ranged expertise nerfed, right? But he's still really good at punching. So really consider that. There are some problems with Vader, like he hasn't got any crit mitigation on his defensive expertise tree, but he is bringing 4 force as well, only wants to use 1 really on his turn. I think Vader is definitely someone that I wouldn't be... I think Jedi Hunter is definitely A tier, but you are more likely to see him in that Republic shell than you are in the Empire version, although I do think Vader Iden is still a good list. Iden, I'm going to talk about Iden in a moment, but I think she is surprisingly good at punching. So it's about Iden. Iden, I think, is still up there in A tier as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see her in a list that won a game. again, that won a tournament, right? Iden's biggest thing, she got exposed on a stick. She's got heaps of really useful reactions. She's really good at ranged, and she's actually pretty good at fighting as well. So she's an extremely flexible character. She's an extremely flexible beat stick, and she does also hand out some extra conditions of movement and things as well. Like, what's not to like about Iden? Especially seeing her now a lot of the time in that Iden Hask and then the Elite Squad troopers that are absolutely a phenomenal pick as well for Iden there. The Armourer, I think the Armourer is A tier. I've put both the Armourer and Mando in A tier. I think the Armourer, yeah, you see Armourer Mando lists, but you also see like Armourer Maul, Armourer Balin. The Armourer shows up in a lot of places. Some people might think that she should be B tier, but like I feel that she enables so much. Her whole, like, you're only ever running her with her box, right? And so one of the reasons that the Armourer is in A tier is, again, its strategic positions. It's the fact that Paz Vizsla really likes strategic positions, and we're playing a lot of strategic positions here in the UK, which is really gonna boost the Armourer, who was already a really good sort of melee beater. Like, she kills things, she's very hard to get to kill herself, and she enables you to bring her, but you're not bringing Paz Vizsla without the Armourer. It's just not happening because of the squad points. So she's kind of standing there in A tier by virtue of her entire package, which you have to bring her to access, right? Hunter. I think Hunter is still good, and Boss Hunter, if you like, I didn't say wanted to be totally driven by Longshanks, but Boss Hunter is still doing stuff, right? I think Hunter definitely has a place. I wouldn't be surprised to see him. Now, I've not played into Hunter personally in a little while, so I don't see that much Hunter around. So this is one where I'm being steered a little more by the data than by my personal opinion, right? But Hunter, like, again, there've been no nerfs that have fallen on him, and I think Boss Hunter's still very, very good as a list. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Hunter winning an event either. Moff Gideon is like criminally overlooked, I think. I think Moff Gideon is one of the strongest pieces in Empire. I think he's got a lot of mobility that he hands out. He's got, I think, a decent profile for attacking and stuff. He does stuff. And then crucially, like, he'd be a middle of the road B tier guy, but then crucially, he's got that, the Moff tax. You have to pay an extra force to reserve your model. And there are so many lists out there, like, I know when I was experimenting with loads of things with Balin Skull, there are loads of lists out there where the list brings 5 force, right? And you know, if you're bringing a 5 force list and you see you can't play a 5 force list into Moff Gideon. It just can't be done. You know, you really are playing with one hand behind your back in that situation. So I kind of strongly would say Moff Gideon wouldn't surprise me to see him in A tier. I think, you know, for all I was seeing the praises of Morgan Elsbeth, I do think that the Veers Moff list, where Moff is running Morgan's box, is really interesting. I think Moff is A tier, definitely. And a lot of it comes down, he will be B tier, but then the Moff tax is just absolutely nothing. There's no other ability in the game quite like it. And I think it's one that's quite easy to underrate as the person playing Moff, right? And so maybe this is something where people that had to play against Moff consistently rate him higher than people who play with him, because you don't necessarily, unless your opponent announces every time, I really want to reserve now, but I'm not going to because Moff tax. I really don't want to play this character, but I can't reserve because Moff tax. Like, you might not know what an effect your Moff Gideon is having on your opponent unless they tell you about it. But I think, yeah, really powerful ability. Kit Fisto, recently, like, buffed Kit Fisto. Again, I do think he's in A tier. I think there's this milieu of, you know, whether it's Kit Fisto or whether it's Padme. You know, that he's one of these characters where you often see him running that kind of Pons 7 Scorch package, because he just does good stuff, right? He just does good stuff for characters, and he doesn't really mind that much what he's paired with. And his new abilities, he again exerts quite a large kind of zone of control. And again, because you play so much strategic positions, I think that Kit is powerful, and I wouldn't again be surprised to see him in a list that won an event. And he goes in a multitude of lists. Mando, again, the Mando's not been changed since release, and the Mando's always been ridiculous. Like, Mando is really difficult to kill. He has a pretty good attack. He has Dicer's displacement, and he has reposition on revenge. And people are starting to realize that you can quite easily play around his list building restriction of needing to be like not within 2 of anyone that isn't a scoundrel or a bounty hunter or a Mandalorian, right? I think Mando is still going to be a feature of game-winning lists. I think he's here in A tier to stay. I don't think the game has really moved on from how useful and powerful he is, right? And yeah, I've got a lot of time for the Mandalorian. He's someone that I hate to have to play against because he's hard to deal with, right? He is hard to deal with. Cassian, nearly put him in B tier, but clinging on to A tier, has fewer lists that he can kind of operate within now. But I think if you're doing the Cassian PLC, and if you know, Cassian PLC, by the way, is the classic example of a 5-force list that Moff Gideon just turns off, right? For the people who are doubting Moff Gideon, like if someone's playing Cassian PLC into you, they do not want to see Moff Gideon on the side of the table. But Cassian PLC, if you can manage the Force, and it is tricky, right, because you want to spend Force for K2SO's revenge trigger and things like this, but it can be extremely powerful if you get the reps in. And then Boss. Boss is really interesting because Boss got nerfed in a number of ways. He got his ranged attack table nerfed, and he can no longer do his like turn 1 opening shenanigans. But Boss is still really good. I really like the Boss Vader 1 list, because then when Boss is punching, first of all, he's still really good at punching. And then he's got Vader dice, so that's good. But the biggest thing that Boss does is he is the only guy that's letting you bring the whole Delta package. And a lot of people I know are now fond of Pons to run 7 Scorch under someone other than Boss. But I don't think enough people have actually interrogated, like, okay, is Kit Fisto, for example, bringing enough is he better enough than Boss to justify the fact that I've traded Fixer for Pons? Right? I don't think enough people are asking that question. I think Boss is still very good, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a Delta squad list with Boss win an event. It really wouldn't. So that's my A tier. I think those are all the things that I think are your go and grab. I'm making a list. I want to win. I want to do well. Those are the things I'm going to grab. So let's get on to B. Now, B is, you know, characters that I think can do well with a skilled player, or characters that have niche builds, or that just fall short of A in one way or another. And the first one here is Kanan Jarrus. Now, Kanan is someone who I almost put in A tier. I know a lot of people are still quite scared of Kanan. Kanan has never been nerfed, but Kanan is, and has always been, quite dependent on the stuff that is around him, okay? So Kanan was eaten very, very well in the last meta. Cassian Kanan was kind of the list, right? You can no longer power that, right? You can no longer make that work because of Baze and turret nerfs. You can no longer get enough force through into Kanan. And so if you want to play Kanan now, you're trying to pair him with someone other than Cassian. And Cassian would really enable Kanan, because what you'll be able to do is you run Cassian Kanan with 2 of the Spectre supports. Then whenever those supports got killed, you could reposition and then jump and then fight, right? And that would let you make real use of that revenge trigger. Now if you're trying to play Kanan, it's a question of who you pairing him with. Are we going for like a PLC or a Jin, or are we going to try and make what's her name down here? Hera. That's it. We're gonna try and make Hera work. I don't know. It's a tough one. Are we going to want to try and take Spectre support? It's a tough one. Kanan's still very good, but it's just not quite. I don't think there's quite a Kanan list that's emerged after the changes to Rebels that makes him sing. Because before Cassian, he wasn't really getting, he wasn't really getting played with anyone other than Cassian Andor. There were some Kanan Leia lists, I guess, and you could go back and play Kanan Leia, but I just think Leia has better pairings. I wouldn't be that surprised though if someone's a real Kanan fan to see Kanan win an event, right? The point of B tier is that it would be a little bit of an eyebrow raise, but it wouldn't be particularly surprising to see any of these characters win events either. I think they're a hair less obvious than the A tier. That's really all I think. Right, Veers. So I think Veers is in the best list in the game, but why isn't Veers in A tier? I think Veers works if the list that you're running involves Veers on one half of the list, and then the Night Troopers in the other half of the list. And the problem is, Veers kind of needs the Death Troopers on his half of the list, and he needs Enoch and the Night Troopers on the other half of the list. And so the only other things you're really playing with in that list is the primary. Are you taking Morgan, or are you taking Moff? And then the secondary you run under Veers. You should take Death Trooper Escort. I guess if you want to run, you could try Snow Trooper Lieutenant there instead, especially if you're trying to do all Empire Premier. But like, it's one very narrow list. And then I think if you try and do other things with Veers, right? Unless you pull something, you're going to struggle a little bit. Because he's been buffed, but he's not quite there. Like, his actual activations are pretty bad. Okay. I want to talk about Riff Tamson and General Grievous together. They will pair, either one of them will pair with Lumi and all the droids and make a really good list, right? And that's what makes them really, really good. I personally prefer Grievous in that position because he's got the more synergy with the B2s to get them to do more 5 dices. I do kind of get the people like Riff because that gives you a bit more force back, which is really useful. Stop you running out of force as well. And he's just a stone cold killer. Is Riff Tamson. But again, a bit like Veers, I don't see these guys working really well outside of those particular lists. Anakin's really good, but he's like the problem is he's not Darth Vader Jedi Hunter, and you can't take him in the same list as Darth Vader Jedi Hunter, and he is greedy. He's not really. He does now hand out the move, right? I guess after he kills people, and he can get you force back, but there's not really that many lists that synergize. If you want to play Anakin, you're starting from the position of I want to play Anakin. And what am I building around Anakin to make Anakin the star, right? So again, classic B tier. I think he could do well, but it needs someone to be in the right place with the right build that really wants to make Anakin work. I don't think he's an obvious pick. Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan, I think, does suffer from the thing of you can't reserve and then reserve again now, right? Obi-Wan hates having to go very early doors when he's not moved up the field. And that's a struggle for him, okay? I think if you want to play around with hunkers, like Balin's a bit better now as well. Like, the hunker playing around with ability is quite good. I rate Obi. I do. Again, I think one of the things with Obi is that it relies a little on catching people out. It relies a little bit on people forgetting that if they shoot you, you can drop your hunker to dash somewhere, right? And I think everybody kind of knows, all right, that's Obi, he does these things now, because obviously he was a starter box model. And for that reason, he's slipped down into B, but I still wouldn't be that surprised to see him doing really well in an event, right? The Ewoks, I think Ewoks, if you are comfortable playing the Ewok build, I think Ewoks are really good. I think both Chirper and Logray, they have great synergies with the other Ewoks. They have great turns in their own right. They do loads of stuff. Logray's a little more buff dependent and buff heavy. Chirper is a stone cold killer. And I think that they are characters that are consistently underestimated. I wouldn't, again, be surprised to see the Ewok list getting that far and doing that much. Yeah. Balin. I love Balin. I am the world #2 Balin player. I think Balin is really very, very good. But he is in B tier because I don't think he's an obvious choice. Because there's not... He doesn't have obvious, like, tag-based synergies with other things, right? If you're playing a Balin list, then it's something where you have to think and iterate and try and go, what do I want to run with Balin? And you have to get a lot of reps in to try and see his play patterns and work out how he works and why he works. So he's not an obvious choice, but B is for Balin. Like, excuse me. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Balin doing really well in an event. Hopefully cleared my throat now. Maul, I'll talk about Maul and Ahsoka at about the same time as well. So they are the starter box default, like, faction agnostic characters, essentially. I really like Maul. I mean, I would say that I am currently the world #1 Maul player. But, like, Maul has problems. His problems are his revenge that's only from a melee attack. People either know that that's there and they play around it and you see if it wasn't on your card, or they don't know it's there and you slaughter them and then they feel bad about it and then they don't do it again the next time. I think Maul is really very good, but you are giving up synergies, I guess, if you play Maul, right? And so you have to ask yourself, if I'm going to run Maul in this list and I'm getting all this extra free, like, he doesn't use any force on his turn, he brings me 3 force that the rest of my list can use, that's great. He's got a pull, that's great. He's got a decent attack, that's great. He's very mobile, he can move 3 long moves in his turn quite trivially. This is all great, but what I'm losing is the synergy that I could get from another primary that shared loads of tags with the rest of my list. Jedi No More is kind of similar, right? She does have the Gar tag, and that's nice, but she doesn't have the Jedi tag because she's Jedi No More, and that presents problems. I think Ahsoka is another one of those primes. She's got a lot going for her. She's got a really good revenge ability, right? She's quite hard to kill. She's got jump on expertise. She's hard to pin down. Whether you prefer Ahsoka or Maul, I think is down to your taste and how you play the game, but it's the same thing. They want to slot into somewhere where kind of tags and factionality is something that you're willing to sacrifice, or it's not that important, right? Bottom half of B, so Jyn Erso, like, I don't think we've seen the best Jyn Erso list yet. I think there is something there with Jyn, with the way she enables people like Callus and Zeb, with the amount of movement she gets, with the fact that she's got a really decent attack. Like, Jyn is a really powerful piece. I think you need to be a bit of a Jyn specialist, right? And that leads me right into Han Solo, who feels very similar. They're both this kind of gunslinger archetype with a lot of movement, a lot of technical stuff that they're doing, and they require quite technical play, right? But it wouldn't surprise me to see them there, for people that have mastered them, to see them appear in the podium of a GT at all, right? Mother Talzin, a lot of people have written off Mother Talzin and don't think she's playable. I've played into Dan Humpage. I know that Mother Talzin can be really, really awful to play against, right? Manipulating hand, yeah, Morgan has it and Morgan does it better. There's a Morgan Mother list out there that's really good, right? You run Morgan with Death Trooper Escort the Dark Troopers, you run Mother Talzin with Obi-2, right? And then the Night Sisters, really good list. You got all the spare force for Obi-2's disarm. Really, really cracking list. And you've got double manipulating hand. Really powerful stuff. I think Morgan has, Mother has problems. She's slow, but again, here in the UK, we're playing a lot of strategic positions. Third time saying it, Morgan is given a big boost by the fact that you deploy her on your left if you're player one, and you've got that. You don't have to move it. You're not going to have to move her halfway across the board, so she makes up for her slowness, right? Jedi Knight Luke. Luke here could have fallen down into C tier. I just think, again, he's one of these very technical rebel pieces. He brings really powerful abilities. He recently got that stealth buff that he can basically attack twice all the time and doesn't necessarily need to have an objective available to do his ability from the forums. He got his aura that he gives out. Like, the biggest problem with Luke, honestly, is that he's 7 squad points. He can't take himself like Daring Hero Luke, so he is a struggle to build a list for that feels good and usable. You have to either take Bodhi or Bartu, and that is problematic for him. But I think the right person will find a Luke list, and I wouldn't surprise me utterly to see him do really well. Thrawn. Thrawn is one of those characters that, again, he's very technical, right? He has his fans, his people that really get on well with Thrawn, and it wouldn't... I think he's another one of these classic B-tier units where he's not the obvious pick. He's awkward. He's 7 squad points. He's pretty good at fighting. He's pretty mobile. He makes your reserves cheaper. He's doing a lot of stuff. He has all these extra cards that you have to reason with. So it's like his abilities are kind of drip fed out across your deck. And sometimes that can be really good, and sometimes you just don't get them when you want them. But I think, again, Thrawn is the kind of person that with somebody that's got the reps in, that really understands him, that kind of sees what he's supposed to be doing, could do really... And that's really the hallmark of what I've got here in B. It's those people that I think can do really well with someone that's really kind of fashion something for that character. Emperor's Servant, exactly the same. I don't think he's as good as Jedi Hunter, but I know some people really like him. And on Zombie Hedgehog won the UK Games Expo with him. Now, Zombie Hedgehog is the world #1 Emperor's Servant player, but I can't really, if he's won Games Expo, I can't really put him down lower than B tier, can I? Right? I think Emperor's Servant is a tricky character to use, for sure. Right, I've had games where he's failed to wound Shinhati by accident somehow, and then had to go back into the deck, which is interesting. But he, like, again, not the best Vader. But then if Jedi Hunter wasn't here, would he be A tier? Because he is still good at doing the Vader stuff. He will remove stuff most of the time. Right, and then we're going to the C tier. So C tier are the characters that I think are underpowered, right? They are underpowered, they are difficult to use, but I think that there are potentially problems in calling for their immediate, like, buff. Now, all these characters in C could get little minor buffs, or might find that buffs to the things around them made them powerful. We'll start with Krennic. So I really like Krennic as a character, and he's someone that I think there's a real temptation in my mind to try and get Krennic to work. Krennic has a lot going for him. He has 9 squad points. He synergizes well with stormtroopers, and he can take a point, like with his aspirations side, where he can take a point even if you have more models on it, which is a very powerful ability. There's some interesting hunker synergy and stuff inside him with where the deploy the garrison works and the shore troopers and this and that and the other. The biggest problem with Krennic is that he's slow. He has no short move, so you kind of have to run him with death troopers, and at that point he's just like, he's shit Veers, because he's got the same malady as Veers in that he doesn't have a short move. He's got more squad points, But if you're having to run in with the 4-point support, then it's like, great, I can take a 5-point secondary. Am I going to take Death Trooper Specialist, who's arguably worse than Death Trooper Escort, right? Worth taking if you've got Death Trooper Escort in your other squad. Or am I going to take Vader 3, who is cool, but kind of doesn't synergize with anything we're trying to do with Stormtroopers and that here. So it just doesn't quite fit, right? It doesn't, there's not a satisfying Krennic list there. I think if there was a good 5-point secondary that complemented Krennic, he could be uplifted. Like if you could really, or if Empire got a more straightforward like 5 squad point support, right? That was just like an Empire 7 Scorch or an Empire Basin Turret. Like, there are lots of things that could happen around Krennic to make you able to really leverage his 9 squad points, but I think he struggles to leverage the 9 squad points. Grand Inquisitor, I really struggle with Grand Inquisitor because you read his card and you look at him and you're like, oh wow, he's really good. He's really mobile, he gives me force back, he moves other people around, what more that you want, and then you try and play Grand Inquisitor and it's, I don't know whether it's his expertise tables or his trees, he just doesn't feel good to play. He just doesn't quite do it for you. And he just seems a little bit left behind. But his card looks so good, and the synergy looks so good, that I think there could be something there, right? But when so many people are choosing, who want to run like the Inquisitors, are choosing to run them under someone else, and to eschew the extra synergies and stuff they get from Grand Inquisitor, it's really telling, right? And if he's not being run with his box, he doesn't really have a place. Just a hard character to leverage. Count Dooku, one of my favourite characters in Star Wars. I think Count Dooku is really good, with obviously caveats. Like, he's hard to kill, okay, but he's not terribly hard to shove off a point, right? He is okay on the attack, right? He has a revenge, but not when you kill supports. And people will just kill your supports, and then you won't necessarily get your revenge attacks, right? You know, I really thought when the new B1s came out, Dooku would be really good with them, because obviously they're unkillable supports, right? But then people can just farm the B1s themselves for momentum over and over again against Dooku. That's what they're incentivized to do, and it's really ugly when that happens. So I just think Dooku's been left behind a little bit. It's also annoying that Dooku is the only... He's like the only faction leader we have in the game, right? Like, you don't get Palpatine, right? Or like Mon Mothma, right? Like, but you do get Count Dooku, right? He is the faction leader for the CIS, right? Leader of the Separatists, and yet his move another has a range 3. Like, that's a bit weird. Why does his move another have a range 3? Asajj is interesting. I still think, like, I'm like the number 3 rated Asajj player, I think. Like, I still think that the list where it's, you know, Dooku and Asajj and Jango Fett, I guess the Magna Guard, right? But crucially, Asajj with the Nosserin Aquas is a good squad. Because Asajj is like one more dice away from great things, right? She can have a really cracking turn where she, you know, like jumps halfway across the map, murders somebody, runs somewhere else, kills something. She's very like Darth Maul adjacent. The trouble is she's just so force hungry, right? And the wheels start to fall off if she gets wounded herself, and then you're not getting the force back. So you need to pair her with someone like Dooku, but as we just discussed, people aren't getting the kills with other people. Like, at least with Asajj Dooku, the problem comes if they kill Asajj. If they kill Asajj, you get 2 force. If they don't kill Asajj, they haven't killed Asajj. So that kind of helps, right? And I'm scared if they buff her again, she'll become ridiculous, because she's not actually that far away from being really good. She's got a really interesting kit, right? very, very mobile, one of those mobile primaries in the game with her ability to just reposition every time she makes a full move. She's just not quite got a list that fully supports her, right? Which is an issue. We talk about Lando and Cad and Hondo. I know Plo Koon's there on the graphic. It's about Lando and Cad and Hondo. These guys, I mean, Fraser is out there doing obscene things with Hondo and Lando. I know this to be true. But generally speaking, like, these guys fit together in my mind because they all bring 2 force. They all have a way that through gameplay you can get your force back and more, okay? And they all kind of come with a gimmick. Lando's gimmick, obviously, is that he can change the faction tags between Empire and Rebels. Cad's gimmick is essentially that he has the 9 squad points, and you know, he gets your force back when you kill people, but they all have force regen. But his main thing is that he has the 9 squad points. And then Hondo obviously hands out the Hondo dice when scoundrels are attacking, and you can do great things with them. But the problem with all 3 of them is that they have depressing actual activations. And so it's really hard to leverage all the things they're doing for you against the idea, well, like, what if instead of Hondo, I was playing Darth Vader, right? Or someone else whose basic activation didn't suck. That's the issue. And Hondo and Darth Vader are actually very comparable people because they're both basically doing the same thing, handing out extra dice. It's just that Darth Vader has a lightsaber and Hondo has a monkey. Plo Koon is by far and away the worst, like, Republic primary, right? Plo Koon just isn't quite there, right? He's like Pound Shop Ki-Adi-Mundi. He plays in similar play lines to Ki-Adi-Mundi, but has less useful abilities on his card. The only reason I think to play Plo Koon is because you were trying to play Ki-Adi Plo, and you just wanted, well, already got Ki-Adi, so I want someone else with a force push who's kind of like Ki-Adi. But he's really tricky. I can't see an easy place for him to kind of thrash out. But, you know, Republic's really good, right? Like, they got really good other primaries, secondary supports. So you make a Plo list that will do reasonably well because he's not being asked to carry the list on his shoulders, right? Endor Leia, Green Leia, is probably, I think, the spiciest take on this list, right? Yes, she enables you to take, you know, rebels in an Ewok list, right? And yes, she has expose on a stick. But whenever I've tried to play her, like, her turns are bad. She feels like a liability. She feels like she doesn't accomplish much. You know, she's one of those characters that's definitely like, if your opponent has Anakin, for example, and you're like, I'm going to move Leia up and put her near the minute and then just die. Right? She will just die, especially if there's any benefit for killing primaries like Anakin has, but like, she'll just die. And she does stuff, she enables stuff, but again, you bring a utility piece. Yeah, it's a struggle. I think if I was playing an Ewok, like a single Ewok list, I'd be looking at both Ewok primaries. And yeah, you can look at it and go, well, no, but I need her if what I want to do is use, you know, Chewie or 3PO and all these people, but it's a tough one. I don't think she's pretty good. And then Hera, difficult to warrant her inclusion. She is pretty unique, and there are people that have done great things with her, right? But those people are few and far between. Again, she's kind of a support one, and those support primaries are hard to use. Yeah. Hera could almost be in D tier, but I'm just a little bit worried. If you buff someone that has the Spectre tag, and given all the things said about Kanan, like, do you risk buffing that whole sub-tag into the stratosphere? I don't know, right? Is it important for Kanan's balance purposes that the other Spectre primary is kind of tricky to use well? I don't know. And then we come on to D tier. We got Ahsoka, Fulcrum, and we've got Crosshair. who I just think is very difficult, for different reasons, very difficult to use. You know, you'd think I had the conversation with Jay, right, when at the UK Games Expo, which came up to me and said, you know, I'm very surprised that you've done so well. I came fifth. Like, it was funny because Helen was third, she was fourth, I was fifth. And she said, I was very surprised you're doing very well with your list because I don't really rate Balin. What's so good about him? And I said, well, you know, you give him 4/4 so you can kill a guy dead. And Jay looks at me and goes, well, anybody can do that. Like, Fulcrum can do that, and she's not particularly very good. The thing is, right, Balin can do that, and he also has his whole identity that gives him, you know, gives Hunkers out and Hunkers for expertise, and he's buffing your whole list. Jedi no more, not Jedi no more. Fulcrum just doesn't do enough. She's like, give me all your force, and I'll try and kill somebody. And unlike Hussar, she doesn't even have like a push. She doesn't do anything else, right? Yeah, okay, she brings 4 force and 8 squad points. I guess that is the bit of utility she's bringing, but she will easily burn through that extra force that she brings. So it's not like a Darth Maul situation where the buff you're bringing for the rest of the list is that you're regenning force, right? She's bringing one extra force for her sort of squad point class. That's true. She's the only 4 force, 8 squad points character. But she, just because of the way the card's written, she'll easily burn through that extra force. So it's just, she's so selfish. And then there are other primaries out there that are as good as she is at hitting, but then bring you something else, whether that's a team-wide buff or a force push or whatever it might be. And then Crosshair, I don't know. I should actually try Crosshair one of these days. The truth is I've never played with him or against him. He's just kind of commonly regarded as being awful. And I've read his card a couple of times. There's nothing on there to convince me that he isn't kind of awful. But maybe he's worth trying just to see. Like, but he's just in a challenging place because he's like this sniper character that does these things, but he doesn't necessarily get the kill whenever he shoots. Yeah. Hard to say. Crosshair's a tricky one, and because I think it's been received wisdom that Crosshair's the worst character in the game. That I've never played into him. I've never played as him, and I think he's the only person on this list. I'm quickly thinking, genuinely, at this point in my career of Shatterpoint, I may have never played into Plo. I think Crosshair, Plo are the only 2 primaries that I've never played a game as or against, right? But he's there because he's there, right? Maybe I should give him a go. Maybe he's secretly got some secret sauce that I can unlock. I don't know. Just to plug upcoming Shatterpoint events, as this is a Shatterpoint channel, a Shatterpoint video. We got the Entoyment Showdown on the 22nd of August. I will be there with my lovely wife. We got the Battle of Oxford on the 13th of September at the Wigan Pen in Oxford. I will be there as well. Trying to use a bus. Return of the Jedi Trials should be the flagship event of the calendar for this season, hopefully. Just needs a few more sign-ups to be really, really good. Really looking forward to that. And then we've got the Shatterpoint Casual event, Cardiff Road to the Welsh GT. Unfortunately, can't attend that one as it is on the Sunday of the Return of the Jedi Trials. But if you are newer and maybe you don't want to throw yourself into a GT, although to be fair that you could do, or probably more usefully, if South Wales is an easier trek for you than Stockport, have a look at the casual event there, the Road to the Welsh GT. Then we've got the Phantom Pathfinder in Peterborough, Angle Gaming Lounge, 3 rounds showdown. Looking forward to that one. Leodis Games, details to be confirmed. Come on, man, let's get those details out there. I'm sick of looking at this to be confirmed. I want to know prices, times, round numbers, format. Let's go with that one. Looking forward to that. Assuming that that does come out and does run and is a real thing, Helen and I should both be at that one. We got the GT Gaming series, so Jed's ongoing series of smaller events. Me and Helen should both be at that one as well. And then the Welsh GT, 14th, 15th November, the last GT in the UK, unless this UKTC one materialises. again, looking forward to that one. Should be a really good event, really nice venue. And then looking ahead into next year, we've got the Rise of the Jedi in March 2027. So, what do you think of my tier list? Did I have any hot takes that seemed acidic and wrong to you? Would you be interested in me doing a similar video with secondaries and supports? Do let me know. Like, subscribe, comment, etc. Consider joining the Discord, and a big thank you to all of my channel members. I hope you have a really great day. I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and I'll see you again next time. Cheery, 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 cheery. Bye, 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 goodbye.